There's an unbridgeable gap between philosophy debating and people who debate anime. Specifically, two people who debate either philosophy, or one person specifically usually debates philosophy, and the other person typically debates things like Naruto inverse, JJK inverse, because the real gap between the two isn't in terms of just a skill gap. Well, I'm not going to say it's in terms of a skill gap, but more so in terms of a topic issue. So, for example, take two people who debates completely different topics. One of them debates philosophy, the other one debates, like, I don't know, Naruto or JJK inverse. And the person who debates philosophy has transitioned from usually debating anime in the past. Usually the person who's debated anime will feel like the other person is obligated to meet them on whatever topic that they wish to engage them on, because they have prior experience on it. And in my opinion, I don't think that that's very fair or even an intelligent thing to do, because again, usually whenever people are trying to learn something new, most of the time their focus is going to be heavily placed on the new thing they're trying to learn. Anybody who's trying to transition into debating philosophy, whatever field of philosophy you're trying to talk about, right, obviously is going to be infinitely more complex than talking about Cross versus who wins, Reinhardt versus Femta. Right, it's going to be infinitely more complex. So trying to like ground people and say that, oh, you're dodging, or oh, you have an obligation to debate this person because you've done the topic in the past is quite silly to me. In fact, I think that the entire concept of neutral topics should also just be abolished, because again, typically it's not as if that there's one, it's unclear what like a neutral topic even means, because if a neutral topic just means you've debated it once, then for any topic you've debated even once, even if it's in a non-serious troll environment where you've just argued for the sake of arguing, right, obviously now people feel as if you're obligated to engage them on it, which leads me to the second sort of issue I want to talk about, which is the entire sort of pressure about quote-unquote ducking debates. For example, take I don't know, imagine Dead Boy and Eric wanted to debate, and Dead Boy kept yelling at him that, oh, Eric, you know, in like 2008 in Mogadishu you debated like Naruto inverse once. Why are you debating me, bro? Why are you debating me? And then everyone in the chat will be like, lol, 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 oh my god, Eric is ducking. It's like, and then people usually feel really pressured to start debating topics that they don't regularly do. And I feel as if that's actually something that happens to lots of people whenever they debate, right? That especially people who usually debate philosophy, and then they are like surrounded by people who debate fiction. So instead of focusing on the things that they're actually good at, then instead they'll keep consistently like churning out bad performances because they're forced to debate things that, one, they don't care about, right, and two, they just aren't as good at. They don't invest enough time into arguing it, right, they don't put as much effort into creating arguments about it, therefore they end up underperforming. And with these consistent underperformances racking up and stacking up, right, you'll notice that these people who usually will be considered extremely good based off of their performances on philosophy, then you'll see some random fiction low tier sit there and say, oh my god, this person is really bad, not because of anything that they have or some underperformance they have which is related to their main topic, but instead some underperformances related on topics which they don't really do. Although I don't think specifically that you should only be judged off of one specific topic, which are best at, unless it's like the case that that's the only topic you do, which again I feel as if that's like, it takes far less skill. Instead, I think that you should be judged on topics which you consistently care more about. Philosophy as a branch, or like imagine there's two branches, philosophy and like fiction debating. Philosophy as a branch has infinitely more branches in comparison to what you can talk about. All of the topics you can talk about, at least in some way you can connect one of them to the other, right? So like obviously it's going to require far more connection with or far more focus, I should say, and far more like preparation in order to, for example, be able to perform at a high level in terms of debating philosophy compared to perform at a high level in terms of debating fiction. So look at, for example, I don't know, debating abortion, and you can actually see this within Gyro's debate with Rizhan, that even if you, no matter how much you prepare for, I don't know, you prepare for the reductives, you prepare for any of the thought experiments, you prepare for the normative view, right, but if somebody just gives you like, I don't know, a defeater which directly targets the sort of metaphysics you have, right, and thus you can't hold the same sort of conclusions you have about abortion, you just won't be able to actually refute it, because one, you just don't know, you haven't thought about any sort of arguments to refute it. And on the other hand, this other person has created arguments, they've thought about it far more than you have, they're far more prepared than you are, right, and they've created better arguments than you have based off of what they've read, and due to this they'll be able to come out on top. So in terms of philosophy debating, you can say that okay, it takes at least reasonably more skill in comparison to debating it, in comparison to anything else. So whenever I see people try and judge people off of debating like anime or debating fiction, more in comparison to debating like anything else, it seems odd. And in fact, the second thing I want to talk about is that there is well, no, that isn't the second thing. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not keeping count, but it can't be the second thing. But like the sort of issue is, and whenever these people who are forced to, who usually debate philosophy, they'll go out, they'll be debating people on TikTok, they'll be debating like anybody who on philosophy, whoever like wants to debate, right? Instead of them actually focusing, right, whenever they're debating this other guy on fiction, instead usually they will just troll out, or if they don't troll out and they actually seriously attempt to debate, they aren't, even though they are seriously attempting it insofar as they aren't just actively throwing the debate like for no reason. Instead of doing that, they just won't put as nearly as much focus or nearly as much effort into it, right? Merely because of the fact that they just don't care about it enough. And I think that an issue that people have is that they're coming with the background expectation that they will be judged off of the best performances they have, and the best performances they have are the performances they have on say philosophy. But that isn't true, because most people on this app, right, most people who rate people in general, instead of actually judging people off of their best, they are far more willing to judge you off of their worst and then bring you down off of your worst, right? Which is why specifically you see people say like that, oh well, this person had one bad performance or one bad debate, right? And which I don't know, like, whether or not you think those bad debates are actually just quote unquote true representations of your skill or not, right? Or say somebody has just one like bad debate and like the rest of the time they're consistently good. Most people are more willing to say you're really horrible based off of one debate you've had, right, rather than like actually paying attention to the rest, because once they start watching the rest, they watch the rest with the already background expectation that you're going to be bad based off of the initial bad performances and based off of the initial bad sort of performances they've watched. Now, this is not to say that I'm giving any sort of leeway to any sort of the old gen debaters who used to debate, because there's a few distinctions there. One, right, whenever you're talking about people who actively debate, the distinction there is these people who actively debate, you can go up to them and watch their recordings. They're actively churning out recordings. But people who are in the quote-unquote old generation of debating, who usually their performances or recording wasn't really practiced back then, so there's like drastically less performances or less recordings that you can have access to in comparison. So people are forced in one of these instances to actually judge off of only what they know, right? And basing it off of only what you know when there's no other piece of data and you can't really speak to this person is completely fine in my eyes. If they have one really bad performance and no other recordings, right, then I will say that it's completely fine to say that they're really bad, right? But if these are people who actively debate and you can actively go up to speak to them and actively watch their recordings, which they're creating on a daily basis, then it makes no sense. So look at, for example, I don't know, look at Rizhan, look at C, right? Look at I don't know, look at Yanni. I mean, well, Yanni is a bit different because I don't think he cares about much at all. But we can focus on like Rizhan and C. See, in the past, I'm pretty sure, whenever, like, you can look at whenever he was, like, in academy, and he was debating Townwin, and he was losing, and he was losing, and he was losing, and he was losing, and then he debates philosophy, and then you'll notice that there's a very drastic, like, you can even tell from, like, the way he speaks, you can tell from, like, the sort of confidence he has in whatever he's saying, right? There's a very drastic, like, difference in terms of, one, how much he cares about the actual subject matter, and two, there's a distinction in terms of specifically, right, how much knowledge he has, right? And it's the same sort of thing how people will say, oh, why are you judging Gias off of his loss to Tyrell and his loss to Godly, when you could be judging Gias off of his prime, where he beat Destroyer, right? Did you know Infinity told me that he beat Destroyer, dude? Right? Oh yeah, did you know Infinity also beat Destroyer? Why aren't you judging them off of their prime performances, man? And it's like, no, right? Because one, Infinity and Gias did not beat Destroyer, right? But two, it's just like I feel as if it should be treated more as an average, right? Like if there's a topic or there's a set of topics which you consistently care about far more than anything else, right? It should be treated as an average of what your performances are on all of those topics, rather than any sort of miscellaneous topics that you choose to debate otherwise. So, for example, there is a very, very small pool comparatively of people who actively debate philosophy, like within, like, say, servers such as Mars, servers such as Karma, right? There is a very small small pool of people who debate philosophy, right, in comparison to people who actually debate fiction. So these people who debate philosophy are sort of forced. Like, if imagine like I'm beefing with somebody and let's settle a little bit a debate, right? You're sort of forced to debate these people on what they enjoy debating, on what they care about, on what they care about far more, right? And then if you don't debate them, it's oh you're a duck. And if you do debate them and you lose, then it's oh my god, this guy's horrible. Did you see his debate against Discord user Naruto Debater 112526? Did you see that, man? And it's no. I feel as if the entire sort of field of doing that is just really silly, right? That's why I also, but in terms of like what I think about if you say in the reverse, so imagine like I don't know, and no, this is a very good example of this. This guy called Rana on Discord, and he's one of the old gen people who recently came back with the introduction of Mars as a Discord server, and he's come back, and every single time you speak to him, it's blunder after blunder after blunder after blunder after blunder. So we're going to go down, and we're going to actually list, and we're going to determine who really like, what's wrong with this guy. So one, I told Rana that it's possible you can age and not die, and then he said, no, that's a contradiction. It's impossible, right? And then I asked him why, and then he said you cannot die and not die. And then you'll notice that the distinction there is that, you know, obviously it's possible for you to age and not die, right? Like me aging does not entail, or it's not like identical to me dying, right? Then you can say that whenever I asked him Rana what a modality was, he said a modality is a way in which something is described. Obviously you can tell why that's stupid. Then you can look at him actually trying to give what he thought was a valid argument, and we're going to actually find the image so we can determine whether or not this argument is really valid. And you know, I won't show it on screen, but I will quote it, right? So premise 1, Shinra is a human. Premise 2, Shinra ages. Conclusion, Shinra will die. Just an example, but yeah, that's a valid argument. Now you notice that is not a valid argument, right? And but you know the distinction there is, he thinks a valid argument is valid if and only if all of the premises are true. So again, it's very odd because all of the definitions and the terms he uses are very, very idiosyncratic. Nobody else uses it like that, right? Unless they are like also morons. But the distinction that between, say, somebody who debates philosophy, right, making a blunder on fiction, and somebody who's debating fiction, making a blunder on philosophy, is because the views you have on philosophy, right, takes you have on philosophy, actually are able to be translated, right, to views or debates you have on fiction. Look at, for example, things like parsimony, right? Parsimony is a view on the philosophy, right? Oh no, parsimony is wow, no, that's gonna get clipped. Sorry, parsimony is like what's it called? It's a philosophical concept, I should say, that people use every single time they're debating philosophy. No. Okay. Anyways, I got that off my chest. I was watching TikTok, but parsimony is a concept, right, that people use, right, whenever they're debating philosophy, and it can be translated to whenever you're debating fiction, right? And what's it called? Now I can't focus anymore, man. God, I'm a low tier. Sorry, I'm a low tier. Sorry. Okay. Now that that's off my chest, right? But you'll notice that these sort of views, concepts that you can actually apply whenever you're debating philosophy, they can easily be applied whenever you're debating fiction. But the same isn't true vice versa. So again, if somebody doesn't know what Hitchy and Razor is, right, obviously, like, it's a detriment to their own fictional debating, because every single time you debate, you are in some sense invoking some philosophical concept, right? And like whenever you're debating, look at, for example, you like providing evidence, then it just goes into what account of evidence do you have? You talking about parsimony, well, what account of parsimony do you hold to, right? Whether or not parsimony is actually probability raising according to Apollo, you know, much more and things of that nature. So the fact that like one of them can actually be, what the hell am I watching? Anyways, the fact that like some of these concepts can be like applied in terms of fiction debating and the other ones can't be applied in terms of actually debating anything else, right, shows that some of these concepts, or specifically concepts within philosophy, are far more important in the context of debating in comparison to anything else, right? Which is why, right, I specifically like hold far more importance, say, if somebody who debates fiction makes a massive blunder on philosophy, right, like I just did, because I'm a low tier scum, right? But anyways, if somebody who like debates fiction makes a massive blunder in terms of like philosophy, right? Because these are the sorts of concepts that they will apply whenever they're debating fiction. For example, what is the actual essence in providing a chain scale, right? If the chain scale just does not necessitate or even like increase the probability of the conclusion you're trying to argue for, right? What's the point of providing evidence, right? If you don't even have like a solid account of evidence, right? What's the point of arguing for parsimony, right? Or saying that your argument takes more assumptions if you have no good reason to believe that the amount of assumptions your argument includes affects its probability in the slightest. These sorts of things, right? Obviously they easily apply to your own fiction debating, and obviously they will play a major effect in terms of how good you are, right, in terms of these fiction debating, right? But yeah, with that being said, ignoring the blunder, right? If you like the video, like and subscribe, yeah? Fairs. I said for 15 minutes, yo. Fairs. Monetized. Come on.